event. That's next Thursday, February 24th from 5 to 7 p.m. The primary topic is going to be around navigating banking and insurance requirements. But I also intend to do an overview of our pre-qualification process. So on that, as I'm sure Kyle and Julie remembered, we announced our intent to open that pre-qualification window in 30 days. So that means the window would open on March 16th. We have some information up on our website about pre-qualification, but there are still a few more issues that we're working out internally before we can open that window. So all that's to say is please don't rush out right now and start getting your fingerprints or anything like that. We will issue guidance, and we still have a few weeks before that window officially opens. We are also experimenting with live streaming our meetings to YouTube. We don't have an IT department, or I should say our IT department is Nelly.
Thank you, Nelly.
And this is our first attempt at it today. So please bear with us. Let us know if there's any glitches that you're seeing.
I think it's not working right now. So
all right, so it's not working right now. Nelly will work on that. Hopefully we'll kind of work out the kinks and just have this be kind of a normal part of our board meetings, just live streaming to YouTube. And you can find us on YouTube if you look for Vermont CCB. So other than that, just we need to approve the minutes from February 14th, 2022. So you guys had an opportunity to look at those?
Yes.
Yep.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Okay. Turning to the agenda, today is our official public comment hearing for rules 3 and 4. And I pulled up my notes from the last time we did this, and I think that I should just elaborate on what this meeting actually is just a little bit. So pursuant to the Administrative Procedures Act, the board has been and will continue to collect public comments made about these rules 3 and 4, between the time that they were filed and noticed until the time that the official public comment period closes at the end of next week, the 25th. We'll hold at least one, potentially more meetings in the coming weeks to review all public comments that have been submitted. We're going to respond to each unique and substantive comment, and we're going to consider making amendments to our proposed rules based on those comments. See, the public comments and our responses to them are not only helpful to the board to identify and correct issues, they also become very relevant in the next stage of the administrative rules process, where we present our rules as well as all of the public comments that we've received to the Legislative Committee on Administrative Rules. And this committee, their job really is to ensure, one, that everything that we are proposing in our rules is consistent with the legislative intent of Act 164 and Act 62. And two, that we actually listen to and consider the concerns of the people that went out of their way to kind of provide their thoughts to us. Again, once these rules are formally adopted, they have the force of law, and violations of them can result in civil penalties and implicate people's ability to participate in this industry. And, just as a general note, all of the comments we've heard to date have been very helpful to us. They've been instrumental in shaping our proposed license types, our proposed fee structure, and just all of the regulations that we've created. So today we're very focused on rules 3 and 4. So please try to limit your comments to those rules. And, for the most part, the more specific you can get on those rules, the better it is for us. A few ground rules to help facilitate this meeting. We intend to be here for the next 2 hours, regardless of whether people are commenting or not. We won't be specifically responding to comments or having a discussion about comments today. You can ask us questions We do collect questions and try to answer them on our website or kind of directly. We just aren't going to be answering questions today. If you have a public comment, please raise your virtual hand. We'll call you in the order that you've raised your hands, with a few caveats. Generally speaking, we start with people that join via the link, and then we pause and move to people that join via phone. So I'll kind of direct that process. If you're comfortable with it, please just, start your comment by stating your name and where you're from. We do allow repeat comments at this meeting, as in the same person can comment at multiple occasions over the next 2 hours. However, we try to prioritize first-time commenters over people who have already made a comment. I'm going to try my best not to impose any time limits on comments unless it's looking like we have more commenters than we have time to get through them. And then, just as always, I'm going to try to maintain a certain level of order and decorum. So I might step in if comments seem maybe disrespectful to other commenters, or maybe veer too far away from issues that are relevant to rules 3 and 4 of the business of the board. And then just finally, we do ask that people leave their videos and microphones off when they're not commenting. So with that, just open it up. Again, this is a public comment hearing. Please, if you have comments, just raise your virtual hand, and we'll take people that join via the link first. Rule 3 really is about the medical program. Rule 4 is about kind of some of the violations and enforcement mechanisms that the board has. So feel free to give us your thoughts.
Need somebody to break the ice.
Yeah.
All right, well, why don't we just, I see at least one person is joined by phone. If you've joined by phone, you can unmute yourself by hitting *6. But I do see someone did raise their hand. So we'll start with Amelia.
Happy Friday, everybody.
Thank you.
So I am speaking on behalf of the newly formed Green Mountain Patients Alliance, which is made up of myself, Jeffrey of VGA, and Jesse Lynn Dolan. And we have a few comments in regard to Rule 3. The first being Section 3.4.3. And again, we're just asking that you mandate a state-approved and standardized education program across the board of adult use and medical. Everybody should be adhering to the same education. Just for the sake of, customer safety, I think, and customer knowledge, everybody needs to have the same education. Everybody needs to have the same training. Again, there are people who need medical cards who cannot get them for a myriad of reasons that we've gone over a lot. And just because you can't get a medical card and you use the adult use space doesn't mean you need any less protection in terms of education, both on the part of the staff and on your part from what you can receive from the staff. So that just needs to be the same across the board. The next is 3.4.4. And that is that we want to mandate, again, equal education and transparency across markets for consumer safety. Transparency has to include lab testing as well as how they're educating their staff. 3.5.5, and this has to do with the quantity limits. We are asking that you allow medical dispensaries to provide more than 2 ounces in a single transaction. In addition to this, there's an issue with the language in terms of concentrates. I'm just reading through the way it says it. No more than 2 ounces of a combination of cannabis and the equivalent in cannabis product in a single transaction, or no more than 2 ounces of the equivalent in cannabis products. That doesn't really explain how much a patient is going to be able to buy in terms of concentrates, because when you try to come up with an equivalent weight in concentrates to flour, it's difficult because your total weight in concentrates comes from flour that is going to differ greatly in the amount that it yields in concentrate. And so you can't really make an equivalency, like an across the board measurement of how much in concentrates is equivalent to 2 ounces in flour, because it's going to be different depending on the flour. So my suggestion there would just be to come up with a gram cap on concentrate purchases per purchase, rather than trying to equate it to what it would be in flour. Again, because every single kind of flour has a different yield when it comes to concentrates. So you can't really equate the two in terms of weight. Next would be 3.8. Transparency. Again, the medical dispensary licensee's ongoing duty to disclose should also include all lab testing and analysis on all products for transparency, public safety, and patient and customer support, and caregivers. And that was it. I know we've submitted other comments in the past, but those were just the ones we were going to focus on today. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Amelia.
Next we have Matt. Matt L.
Hello, good morning.
Hey, Matt.
Hello. Thanks for having me. Few comments probably to kind of build on what was mentioned by Amelia and probably others ahead of me. You know, I have a very hard time calling our medical program medical. I've had executives from the MSOs testify in front of me in Ag and Senate committees that they spray pesticides on a regular and routine basis, but they don't test for them. So who's losing here? It's our patients. And patients are supporting these institutions because they think they're quote unquote medical. There's nothing medical about these institutions. So I am all for third-party full panel lab testing for these institutions if they are going to be considered medical. And given the fact that most of these folks are owned by out-of-state and out-of-country interests, they have the funding to pay for these testing full panels, unlike the small cultivators. So I am all for these folks need to pay attention to full panel testing. They have had nobody with oversight doing anything for them, given the years of abuse of our patients. And that needs to change. I'm all in full agreement that they need education. Bud tenders need to be educated. This is a very new industry and there is a lot of info coming out. And these folks are the front line to our patients. There needs to be a standardized testing or a standardized educational platform that gets built upon so that the patients have representatives in front of them that supply them with the information they need to make the best choices for their medical treatments. Back to lab testing, there should be absolutely third party. These folks cannot test themselves. That is the fox guarding the hen house, and we know how that goes when there's economics on the line. And I know some of this was legislatively mandated that we're not to add burdensome components to these dispensaries, but again, patients need to be put first, not profits. So third-party independent full panel lab testing should absolutely be mandated. You know, transactions, let's look at our carbon footprint. Do we want people driving to the dispensary as a medical patient constantly, especially if they have issues and getting around is difficult? I think we can up the limits for medical patients on what they're able to purchase because it would reduce their footprint in driving and their time, and they would allow to be at home and deal with what they need to deal with. And as far as, you know, this whole medical program, full transparency, you know, anything that's medical should have full transparency. So again, our patients can make the best decisions and support those that they feel are best adhering to their needs and providing what they need. And again, I cannot stress full panel third-party lab testing. You can go back to all the committee and these folks will tell you straight from their own mouth, that they spray chemicals, yet they're not tested. So you tell me how that's a medical program if they're using chemicals but not testing for them. Please. I know a lot of this stuff is legislatively mandated and is very difficult to get around, but our patients deserve better, a lot better than what they've been given in the last couple years. And I implore you, please, these folks can afford the lab testing. They're multi-state, out-of-country operators that have the funds. Please do not let them get into this market without protecting our patients and providing transparent, clean products. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Matt. So again, if you have a comment and you join via the link, please raise your virtual hand. If you join via the phone, you can hit *6 to unmute yourself. And we'll be here for the next 2 hours. So feel free to chime in at any point. Yeah, we'll go to Jessie Lynn.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is Jessie Lynn Dolan. I'm a nurse and I work specifically with cannabis, but also do a lot of legislative advocacy for the Vermont nurses. This, my speech here is definitely not necessarily representative of the American Nurses Association or the American Cannabis Nurse Association, which I am a director of as well. So this is me speaking openly and freely with no conflicts. Couple things I just want to kind of reiterate. Well, number one, I have to say this seems to be a very quiet meeting compared to other meetings where there's so much feedback. And sometimes that can feel a little disappointing that we don't have as many people speaking up and fighting for patients. And I think that's been an unfortunate generality over the last few years. So in some ways, my hope is to be able to grow a better community here in Vermont between the adult use and the medical. So we also have more of the adult use people kind of fighting and rooting for patients. And I think we can do that. And I think the adult use facilities and cultivators want to do that. So a couple of my thoughts are, as mentioned before, I can't, reiterate and agree that we need more education in the dispensaries, but also in the bud tenders. The reason being, I feel, is not only do we need medical professionals in a medical program, which kind of makes sense, but also my worry is we've seen this in other states and we've seen this in other programs outside of cannabis. When people are allowed to make their own curriculum, they oftentimes take the shortcut and do the least is more approach. And that's definitely not what we want to see here. So I also agree and encourage some kind of state mandated, standardized, and or at least approved curriculum. With that, I think continuing education is very important. This can't just be a one training once a year. When we think about the cannabis industry in general, everything is rapidly changing what we're learning. Also, when we think about social equity, which is such a big, important part of this program we're building here in Vermont, social equity and those discussions cannot just be a 1 hour conversation once a year. That needs to be built into an annual program on a monthly basis. So I think with a standardized curriculum, we also need to look at that continuing education and how important that is on so many different fronts. With that and mentioning that, medical professionals are a great fit in medical dispensaries, I would like to encourage something I've mentioned before. And again, I know sometimes I'm speaking to the choir, but I also like to get this on record and kind of just reiterate and remind some of the thoughts that we have is I think some kind of support line or a hotline, if we're not going to have medical professionals actually available for medical patients, do we have some kind of way for them to have somebody to support them? What we know, unfortunately, all too well is that even some of the doctors who are writing and verifying a medical cannabis card, they themselves don't feel they have the education or knowledge to be the support system more than just signing off to verify that card. And our patients deserve more than that. And we can't always put that on the expectation of the doctor to now go specialize in a new subject and learn a lot of information. We should have a system that patients can have support through the state to educate themselves that will help them use safer, that will help it be more affordable because it will be more efficient for them when they have a support person that can really walk them through that. So some kind of hotline, support line, and or a medical professional in a dispensary. I know I go back to this because I'm a nurse, so I understand the nursing aspect, right? I also understand nursing salaries. When I look at the hundreds of thousands of dollars we have sitting in the medical program funds, we could easily put a nurse full-time in every dispensary for that money. Think about how many patients would have more support. We would have less medication interactions, less concerns if we had that as an option. And we do have the money sitting there to afford something like that. That might not be the answer. Again, I'm speaking from the nurse perspective because I know nursing salaries and I understand how nurses can be that support person and be that kind of education vice that our patients so desperately need. The last thing, or one or two things quickly I want to mention, because I don't want to take too much time. At the same time, we don't have a lot of people chiming in. So, I think one of the best ways we can serve patients, both from that social equity status, as far as expecting patients to travel far with a possible, disability, also looking at reducing that carbon footprint. We need patients to be able to access adult use retail stores without paying the extra taxes, just like they can go to a medical dispensary. I often talk to people who are driving from Newport all the way to Burlington just to use the medical dispensary, because that amount of taxes, when you're paying $200, $400, that's a big difference. But that person in Newport would love to be able to shop local, support a small grower that has craft cannabis with multiple strains, compared to having to shop that international or that, large MSO, drive really far and not necessarily have the strains. I also think that would, as I mentioned in the beginning of this, that would really help hold together the adult use community and the medical patient community. And you would see more and more adult use cultivators and retails catering to and really bending over backwards to support these patients. The last thing I want to mention is what I think is the elephant in the room nobody's talking about. I don't think it's anything we can do about it at this point, but I can't not say it. The fact that the medical dispensaries are going to be able to do adult use sales pretty soon, way before anybody else's. I think we all know and agree that that in no way is helping patients, and this is all about patients. All that is doing, unfortunately, is giving them an advantage over all these small cultivators and small shops in Vermont that we want to see do well, and we want to be the Vermont kind of mom and pop shop way that we are known for. So thank you for that. I do have some other thoughts regarding some of the bills that are legislative session, but I know this isn't the time for it right now. But if at some point, hopefully you guys will be addressing that or working towards that as well. And I've also put those in writing and can send them to you at another time. So thank you again.
Thanks, Jessie Lynn.
Excuse me. Next is Fran.
Hello, everyone. I missed the first 10 minutes today, but there was something that was on my mind that had occurred previous to you guys being in charge, and that was an issue with the NDAs, the non-disclosure agreements made that the corporations were asking or forcing the employees to write, and then that caused a bit of a problem with them being able to come forward when there was an issue that was either a legal issue or a contamination issue. And I would hope that we would protect these employees in some fashion should they be forced to come forward with an actual problem. Thank you.
Thanks, Fran. So again, this is our public comment hearing. It is specific to rules 3 and 4. Those are, of course, the most relevant topics to us currently as we move through the kind of administrative rules process. So if anyone would like to make a comment about rules 3 and 4, they are available on our website. The board, will be here for the next 2 hours, regardless of whether people are commenting. So feel free to maybe take a minute and go look at the rules. And if you see something in there that doesn't make sense or needs clarification, please point it out to us. Otherwise, just feel free to raise your virtual hand, or if you're on the phone, hit *6 to unmute yourself. And Jesse Lynn?
Hi, sorry, I don't know if we're allowed to go for a second time. I know
Yeah, no,
sometimes
go
I
ahead.
totally respect that you guys kind of make that stance. But one thing I did notice, or actually, you know, some of my teammates noticed in the last week, something I picked up on but didn't mention is when it comes to looking at background checks of caregivers. I appreciate and I'm very grateful that hopefully we will be removing the mandated fingerprints. I've been a caregiver for many years and have not had to do that to be a caregiver. But the one thing that caught me a little bit by surprise, and some people might not like that I'm asking for this, but I don't necessarily agree with not having a spouse or a family member have a background check. We know domestic violence is very prevalent in the world. So I don't see any reason why they should be exempt from that background check unless it's for an immediate, you know, because somebody needs that caregiver immediately and there's a month or 3-month window or however long you guys need to do that background check. But I'm not one, since I'm a sexual assault nurse examiner and I've worked in the domestic violence field for a long time. So we know the truth, unfortunately, is sometimes that those perpetrators are within the family. So I'm not one that agrees with necessarily removing that background check mandate for those that we are related to. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Jesse Lynn. So I did just briefly hear a comment from a phone ending in 1945. If you'd like to make a comment, the floor is yours. Yeah. You can hit *6. So there you go. Yep, we hear you.
Remuted. There he is.
All right. I think we hear you now.
Hello?
Yes.
It goes back to the education discussion previously. University of Vermont, I think, is the lead implementing agency for a regional telehealth program for all of New England. I think there could be an education function for both dispensary staff as well as patients by linking the dispensaries to this program, perhaps. The patients could get information and actually talk to someone through the program at the university, and it's already networked to all the providers in the state. So I don't think the number of dispensaries would be that overwhelming to add to it. It's just a thought.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So any other comments? Feel free to just kind of chime in when you're ready. We'll be here. So again, feel free to just raise your virtual hand. We'll call on you, or you're on the phone, hit *6 and just start talking.
Like your radio DJ bits to kind of fill the void.
Andy.
Yes, good morning. Thank you. My name is Andy Goldman. I'm from Ludlow, Vermont. I've worked in and invested in legal cannabis, both medical and adult use, since 2014. Now residing in Ludlow, Vermont, where we have either the sole or very rare distinction of losing the opt-in vote twice. So we're pretty educated on the pushback and the disinformation campaign. No surprise, having been working in this industry for almost a decade. So we are now attending other towns' meetings, trying to correct disinformation. The reason I bring this all up, it is related to Rule 4, because I realize we are trying to stick with that. One of the things that's tangential is that the towns keep asking, what's in it for us? What's in it for us? We've been pointing out the ability and how can we control or monitor. We point out the ability to have a local cannabis control commission on their own, with a local license being $100. It's not very helpful to the towns, and we know the 1 to 2% excise tax recommendation. We can't underline how important that is. I realize that's not in Rule 4, but on the enforcement part, since Rule 4 is about enforcement, I think it would be a big question still, and that towns use as an excuse as to where do we lie if we have a local commission in that rule. I did not see anything about would you delegate to the town, although I would not recommend that, but an answer to where does the town fit in this? Do their regulations, can they, should they be no more onerous than what you have? Does the state commission, the state board have sort of veto power over decisions made by a town, which could happen when you have, the town's officials against it, but against cannabis, but the voters are for it, or just, we're hearing the unhappiness from many that, other forms of cannabis can come in that they can't, there's no vote on it. But again, sticking with Rule 4, since that's what what we're here for, I think that you need to somehow tie that in here to give some clarification for the towns, and also for those wanting to have their towns opt in, and also those that will be operating under other licenses, that some clarity is needed for that. And it would be very helpful. And the more towns that we have opt in, the more ability we have for a market for illicit cannabis to growers and processors to come into the legal world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andy, and thanks for getting some good information out there. I'm going to try not to kind of respond to comments today. I would just say we do have some guidance on municipalities and their local control commission authority in Rule 2.14. And we also created, in response to some of the requests we've been getting from towns, a 14-page frequently asked questions document on our website, which isn't as explicit as I think you're asking for, but it is a helpful tool for municipalities to understand where their authority is and how they can exercise it.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
It's what happens when you start reading the rules at 3 and 4.
Yeah.
I will go back.
Rule 2.14 has a little bit in there, and it's again, not going to be fully helpful, but there's some stuff in there.
Thank you very much, and thank you for what you're all doing. It's much appreciated.
Anyone, again, who would like to just make a comment? It's helpful to focus these comments on rules 3 and 4. That's the real purpose of this meeting or this hearing. But feel free to just raise your virtual hand if you have a comment. Hit *6 to unmute yourself if you join via phone, and we'll just kind of take your comments as they come in. We'll be here until 1 o'clock, and so feel free to just join the conversation whenever you'd like. And Julie did just remind me, sorry, Julie, to put you on blast like that, but we took those municipal FAQs and we actually filmed some of our responses so that people could really just tune in, not have to read a 14-page document, and that may or may not be helpful, but we did film video responses to all those. Nellie, are they?
They're not available yet. That is going to be another thing for our YouTube page once we
Okay.
get that up and rolling.
So those will be on our YouTube page, hopefully well in advance of town meeting week, so that,
Yes.
select boards, local authorities, local control commissions can kind of get some responses or some answers. Fran?
Yes, thank you for taking this comment. I gave this to you guys in writing, then I'm gonna put it out there again since we have a lot of dead air space today. I really think we need to look at raising the plant count for the average person, as well as the medical patient, of course. I've gone to 15 on that. It would be the ideal. That would leave anybody enough to make it through the year. But I think the average person should be at least put on par with the state of Massachusetts at 6 mature plants. And I don't think we need to count immature plants because we lose a lot of plants during growing. And I think that's something that many people have been exceeding the count. And for whatever their needs are, whether they have a card or they don't have a card. And I see this as a limit that was set by the legislature. I'm not blaming you guys, as arbitrary and capricious, to be quite honest. So I would ask that we give good thought to expanding that. And if the legislature has a problem with it, they should understand that people are not generally following that rule. And I think we have a lot of issues that are going to be downrange with law enforcement or enforcement of those rules. And I just don't think they're fair. So thank you for taking that comment.
Yep, thank you, Fran. Amelia?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to what Fran said and advocate that not only do we raise the patient plant count, we've advocated for 12, Fran said 15, I think both are great. But eliminating an immature plant count would be huge. You don't just start 15 seeds and end up with 15 mature plants. That's not how it happens. You cull out males. Sometimes your plants go herm. Like, there are issues. Sometimes you get bud rot. Sometimes you get bugs. Like, you can't just guarantee that your immature plant count will get you to your mature plant count. So I just think that an immature plant count is so outdated. I think it comes from a very prohibitionist sort of perspective. And if we cap our mature plants, there is no reason to have an immature plant count. Like, it just doesn't make any sense.
Thanks, Amelia. THC Analytics?
Yes, hello. Thank you again for taking our comment. Been wanting to comment, but I had baby in hand, and now that she's quiet, I can actually do some work. Nonetheless, getting plenty yes with THC Analytics. I just have a couple of comments. One of them, I was sitting on the House of Representatives talk this Monday, and they were talking about one of the board, the members was asking if you guys had set any limits on concentrates, and the response kept coming back to edibles. I believe what he was trying to ask is if you had set any boundaries on how much a patient or a a consumer can walk away from a dispensary. And I think he was talking about grams in product per se, a concentrate, whether it be a crystal or a sauce or a terp. But nonetheless, I think that's what he was trying to get to. Most states set a limit of between 5 and 8 grams per purchase when you're going to a dispensary. But that's it for that. I do want to comment on 3.43 when you're talking about the dispensary applicants submitting plans for the education for patient education. It's wonderful. I mean, I think it's a wonderful thought that you're doing and it saves you a lot of time having to write all these standards yourself. But at some point, I think that you guys should adopt a standard that everybody should follow, or at least list of minimum standards for us for people to follow. And it should be across not only for recreation, but medical dispensaries too. Same thing goes for testings. Testing should be done across the board again, and done by a third party. If I am to grow my own product and then test it, I can always manufacture testings. But nonetheless, what was one more thought? I'm just going to stop right there. I think I lost my train of thought after that one. But thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. And if the thought comes back, we probably will have time for you to air it out. So again, this is just our public comment period on rules 3 and 4 specifically. We're going to be here till 1 o'clock. So if you have a comment, raise your virtual hand. I see Tree Frog Farms.
Hi, yeah, I just want to, kind of second everything that's been said about the testing for dispensaries and the medical side. I definitely think that they should be held to at least the same standard that we are on the recreational side. And I know this really isn't a comment period for 1 and 2. I know that's all closed, but I thought I noticed an editorial thing I just wanted to bring to attention. In 1.18, where we have all the exemptions for the tier 1s, it lists under 1.4.4 I, J, and K. I don't believe those. I went back and those aren't in 1.4.4 anymore. So I don't know if that was just an editorial hiccup when it got moved and some of the language got changed. Thanks.
Thank you. I think our general counsel's on the line.
He's on there somewhere.
He'll make a note of that. Thank you for catching that.
There he is.
There he is.
Oh.
There he went.
If you want, I can say something really briefly.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so I know we don't make a practice of answering, but in this one case, because it is a purely technical issue, that is correct, and that is going to be corrected in the LCAR process. It will refer to the last 4 subsections of 1.4.4, which was the intention of the board.
Thanks, David.
Thanks, David.
You have Caroline that's raised her hand.
Great,
Hello.
Caroline.
Thank you for taking my comment. I honestly haven't had time to go over all the information, and so I just want to thank Fran and Amelia for usually being on top of it and advising the rest of us. So thank you both. I just want to back both of them. I'm not happy with the plant count. Personally, I don't want to have to grow anything in the winter time, and I don't want to have to do anything indoors. And I really feel like that kind of puts you in a place where you have no choice if it doesn't meet your, the guidelines. I also want to point out that different strains need different times. I need certain strains for certain medical conditions. So that can affect things as well. I also previously had some bugs in my hoop house and was hoping to switch to a larger plant count and have the plants actually just be a lot smaller so that I could reduce the impact of that particular insect so that I don't have to use pesticides and things like that to control it. I would rather have my soil be living and ultimately this is my medicine, and what's in the soil is going to be in the medicine and is going to affect me. So I would like you to think about that as well, because that actually does equate to plant count. And just really, like I mentioned, just I don't want to have to grow in the winter. I don't have the ability because of my conditions. So I'd like to not have to worry about that and be able to have throughout the season, the entire year. And so that's really all. Thanks for taking my comment. And thank you all for helping keep the rest of us updated who may not have the ability to go through all of the material.
Thank you, Caroline. So yeah, I should clarify also just that, if you haven't been able to review rules 3 and 4, just generally speaking, you can definitely make comments just in general about the medical program. If you're a patient, the things that have not been working particularly well, or if they've been working well, what we should maintain in our rules, or what we should be advocating for in the legislature is totally on the table, acceptable for us to hear about that. But Jessie Lynn, did you have a comment?
I did, thank you. I just wanted to extrapolate on the last person that spoke, and I can't agree with that more. I want to let you guys know, and I don't think I've mentioned this in the past actually, is that I often have dozens and dozens of patients reach out because they're not allowed to grow indoor, whether it's their physical ailments. Legally they can't because they rent, or they're in some, they don't have enough space in their indoor setting. I can't second that enough. Also, I wanted to explain the difference in terpene expression. When you grow something indoors, it grows very differently than it grows under the sunshine. And what I have learned is that there are certain chemovars, certain strains of cannabis that work when they're grown outdoors for some ailments, but they don't work as well when they're grown indoor. So for that reason, people also need to grow more outdoor to hopefully last them the entire year. And also, I think you guys know this, last year was a very challenging growing season for many. Last year, more than any year, have I had people come back to me saying, my plants die, I only had 2, I didn't get anything harvested out of this. So I think that is something we should definitely note and be aware of, and possibly consider, increasing that outdoor limit for patients in the future if we can. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's great. It's actually, you're right, Jessie Lynn. We have not actually heard that specific argument in the past, but it's very helpful to hear. Meredith Mann.
Hey everybody, how are you? Good to see you.
Good.
I just wanted to hop on real quick and show my full support for what Jessie Lynn's saying, Fran and Amelia. And having been a bud tender for a long time, this is a really important ongoing issue. There are so many people that do not have and can care for themselves, whether it be low-income housing, senior housing, inner city housing, who knows, or even somebody in their house that opposes that, whatever. So I just wanted to as of now, if they don't have access to all recreational dispensaries and what's available, I think it's important they have a higher play cap, especially. So just wanted to say that, and thank you all for your hard work.
Thank you, Meredith. Thanks for all your support.
Yeah, thank you.
Jessie Lynn?
Sorry, I know I keep jumping in. One thing I wanted to throw in there is when we talk about education, there was a survey that just came out that the medical program put out, right? And one of their questions was, do you feel like you're supported and there's enough education? And a lot of people said yes. What was surprising to me about 5 years ago when I started to attend every one of the marijuana for symptom relief oversight committees is that committee at that point thought they had the knowledge and education they needed. When I started to talk to them about the importance of full panel lab testing, they didn't know what they didn't know. So hopefully that makes sense. So patients are responding saying that, yes, they feel like the staff in the medical dispensary have education because they have none. They don't know anything. So somebody that has a little bit of education sounds like they have a lot. But unfortunately, that level of education is not enough to really support a patient. And that's the prime perfect example of this symptom relief committee really felt they knew what they were talking about and were supporting patients. But when I brought up a few things, they were very surprised. And once they had the education they needed, they completely changed their tune and what they were advocating for. So I just want to bring that up, that I think that is a very unfortunate but true fact here, is that people feel they have the education because they don't actually know what the real education is. I was at the dog park yesterday and listening to one guy preach to another who knew everything under the sun about cannabis. And I'll tell you what, there was maybe 2% of that conversation that was actually correct. But the person listening to the person that knew what they were talking about listened to them verbatim, word for word, to the point that they were going to stop taking their bipolar medication based on some guy at the dog park that told them what to do because he sounded like he knew a little bit more than the other person. So I just wanted to express that, and how the Symptom Relief Oversight Committee kind of changed their tune based on the knowledge they thought they had, which they really did not have an understanding of. And I think that is exactly what happens with a lot of people in the cannabis industry, and that can be detrimental to patients. So we need to recognize the lack of education, not just listen to a survey where patients say, oh yeah, I think I'm doing great. And again, as I preached before, remember, those are the patients that also have that privilege and affordability to shop at the medical dispensaries. So oftentimes the people that can afford to shop at the medical dispensaries are the people that have a little more comfort doing internet searches and feeling as if they have the education they know, because again, they don't know what they don't know. Thank you.
Thank you. Fran?
Just to follow up on what Jessie Lynn was talking about with that survey, the survey seemed to me to be fairly limited. And even if it went out to all the 5,000 patients that are enrolled, or the approximate number there, it didn't include all the people in the state that have either let their cards go and are taking care of themselves, or never had one and are medical users. So I'd like us to take that into consideration when we make decisions based on a limited survey. Thank you.
Good point, Fran. Thank you. So just again, for the benefit of people that have joined recently, this is our public comment hearing on rules 3 and 4. Rule 3 is really kind of an update to the medical rules. And Rule 4 is really about the board's enforcement authority and how we intend to kind of issue notices and violations and what some of the consequences are of non-compliance with rules 1 and 2. If you have any comments on either of those, it's really helpful for us to hear about those comments. We're at a stage now where we have kind of maximum flexibility to amend those rules. Once we kind of pass them along to the next phase, our ability to change them becomes much more limited. So any comments you can give us on rules 3 and 4 now is very helpful. So I see Amelia.
Yeah, just a comment on enforcement of punishment for violating rules 1 and 2. I just wanted to kind of point out that, again, we need protections, specifically employment protections for medical patients. You know, I just small and anecdotally, I worked at Ben & Jerry's when I was younger, and after I got my medical card, they wouldn't take me back because I couldn't pass a drug test because I had my medical card. And that wasn't like the factory itself, it was their temp agency who also hires out for other businesses in the state of Vermont. And that's just like one place that won't hire you or won't keep you on because you have THC in your system. And so I really think that we do need to focus on some kind of employment protection, job protection for medical patients specifically. Thank you.
Thanks, Amelia. Jessie Lynn?
I know I got my hand up again. Thank you guys for being so patient, willing to allow us to say and share so much.
No, keep it coming, Jessie Lynn. It's totally fine.
Oh, good. Thank you. And I agree with Amelia. That's something Amelia and I chatted about, and I think that is so important. You know, I actually have a nurse that recently came to me and is now working for a temp agency as a traveling nurse because that's how nurses can make a lot more money. And she's now having to give up her medical card and go back on 3 pharmaceuticals instead of 1 cannabis prescription. So just to mention that. Also workers' compensation. So I work with a chronic pain doc who we work with people who are not able to go to work because of their injuries, because of some major things that happen in their life. Many of them are on multiple pharmaceuticals. Some of them do find fabulous relief from cannabis, but often they can't afford it because they're out of work. There are other states like New Jersey now has workers' compensation mandated to cover medical cannabis. So that's something I would also like us to push for and work towards because I think that is so important. Those are some of our most vulnerable people. They are the working force here in Vermont, and then they hurt themselves, and now they're unfortunately only able to afford opioids instead of cannabis, where other states are backing that. So that's something so important. And I'll continue on this little rant as far as, you know, affordability of cannabis. We don't talk about it as much. When Amelia and I testified last year, there was a couple representatives that actually afterwards said and apologized that they felt so bad they haven't considered the cost of cannabis and how that can make it absolutely unattainable and unaffordable to some. So I would love us to, you know, discuss how we can do that. And maybe we do that at a state level, have some kind of subsidy for patients. Again, I'll mention the large amount of money we have sitting there in an account for patients that has not been used to support patients. I would also love us to consider a price cap so that patients know they'll never have to pay over $250 for an ounce of cannabis. And that, you know, a large MSO should be able to afford that. And maybe that then spills over into if an adult use dispensary is willing to align with that and say, yep, I will sell for no more than say $250 an ounce, that they then also are allowed to sell to patients without that taxation. So maybe somehow that combines to be able to support patients with that price cap limit. We know here in Vermont, we have so many patients going to Maine to get their medicine because it's affordable. So that is a really big thing when it comes to cannabis medicine. I don't know how many people come to me and say, well, it was working, but I can't afford it anymore. Or, well, it works, and if I could afford more, I could come off 2 more pharmaceuticals instead of the 1 or 2 I already came off. So I think continuing the conversation for the affordability of cannabis is so important. And it ties in with so many different things. It brings us right back to the plant count, right? So it really all works together. The fact that if we don't increase a plant count, if we don't increase a caregiver count, if we don't, look at a cap on prices for purchased cannabis, we really aren't looking at the larger picture, and that's who can afford cannabis. And in that survey the medical cannabis program just did, I believe it was more than 50% that either marked that it was unaffordable or semi-unaffordable. And again, remember, the people filling out that survey are already the patients who are using the dispensary system, so have some kind of privilege with that affordability. So the other 4,500 patients that did not fill out that survey, because only 575 people filled out that survey. So we're only looking about 10% of patients. And those 10%, more than 50% agreed that it was not affordable for them. So I just want to kind of push that financial aspect. I know you guys can't do a lot with that right now, but as things continue, I would love to see that somehow, built in and discussed, because it has to do with every little different piece of it, from can they purchase clones more affordably from a retail dispensary or a cultivator in the adult use market with different strains that are catered towards outdoor compared to purchasing strains at their dispensary, which maybe doesn't cater towards outdoor. They just run the same strains they ran inside. And that's a big difference. If you don't specifically pick your strains to grow outside, you are failing before you even start. So all of this, all these aspects all tie into affordability, which ties into access and ties into that social equity piece, because there are way too many people on pharmaceuticals who absolutely would like to choose cannabis instead, but don't have that option for themselves. So thank you.
Thanks, Jessie Lynn. Fran?
Well, Jessie Lynn gets the Olympic gold medal for that last comment. She sliced up everything I wanted to say pretty much, other than the fact that turning 65, I found out that Medicare doesn't pay for your cannabis. Of course, we know that. But they're more than willing to take money for things that they can't give you. And you're left, I am in that position where you're left trying to afford just to grow. Never mind, I could never afford a dispensary. So I'd put that in there. But what Jessie Lynn just said, everything, I'll just back it up and second the motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Fran. So anyone who has a comment, just feel free to chime in. You can raise your virtual hand, or you can hit *6 if you joined by phone to unmute your phone. And we'll be here for about the next hour. So just jump in when something comes to mind. I forgot to mention also our kind of other public comment period, which is more general. Our after hours one is also next Tuesday, which is the last Tuesday of the month. So that meeting, we just kind of have a very similar format as today, except the kind of range of topics is just whatever people want to kind of talk about, tell the board, help us understand. So that's next Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m. Jessie Lynn?
I'll raise my hand. I got another one. So I
All right.
believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that there is full panel third-party mandated lab testing at specific points, but often the end product only needs cannabinoid testing. What I would ask and really encourage is we need a campaign speaking about terpenes matters more than THC. So I think if you truly want people to understand the effects of the cannabis, we have to look beyond THC. So that last test that consumers can see should not just be the THC and the cannabinoid level that's in there. It needs to list the terpenes. It doesn't matter. Well, it does matter, of course, but whether it's 12% THC or 27% THC, that doesn't help you know how that cannabis is going to affect you as much as knowing how much myrcene versus linalool versus terpinolene that it has in it, because that is the effect. So that will help people understand more. Is this going to make me really tired so I shouldn't be driving? Is this going to make me really hyper and not help my insomnia? So I think having the end product mandated, not just for cannabinoids, but also for terpenes, if we really want to educate consumers and have consumers know how this product is going to affect us, terpenes is absolutely where it is at, way more and beyond THC. Just as an example, I'll tell you what I tell patients every day when I talk to them. I don't care what the THC or CBD percentage is, because I'm going to tell you to start so low with a dose that you're not going to feel it, and you're going to increase so slowly that that will not be a big kind of, you know, issue as far as the feeling you're going to get. What will happen is that those terpenes will affect you drastically different. So when I look at a lab test to help somebody understand how to use that medicine best for them, I focus more on the terpenes than I do the THC or the cannabinoid level. And I would really love to see Vermont be a leader in that. This is where things are going medicinally. We are moving away from calling it sativa or indica. We shouldn't be using that terminology. We shouldn't be focusing solely on the THC levels. We really shouldn't be using all these silly names like Gorilla Glue and, you know, every other silly name out there. If Vermont started to lead the way, saying that you need to list the top 3 terpenes that are in this strain on this packaging, that would give us much more of an understanding how cannabis is going to affect us. And again, just really put us as leaders in showing that we're moving away from this old hybrid sativa indica terminology, and we are coming from the scientific evidence-based methodology. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Fran?
Well, once again, I'm just going to back up what Jessie Lynn just said and also speak about the lack of availability of properly dosed or low dosed, so you can build up, just like Jessie was talking about. One of the things that I've done in a number of years as a consultant with patients who could not get their meds here in the integrateds in Vermont was to connect them with a lab in Maine where you can get a 3 milligram dose, or you can get a 3 1-to-1, or you can go all the way up to 50 milligrams in stages, so that patient can make that choice and dose up slowly. And that makes it a lot easier for a patient to get into this med. I mean, if you take a 55 milligram oil and you take 1 grain of rice in a gel cap, you're probably going to have quite the experience. And if you're used to it, it's okay. But for a patient just starting out, especially a cancer patient who is, dealing with a lack of physical capability, it's going to be too much. So that's what we haven't seen in the state. What I had seen was just basically a very gross product that wasn't defined and wasn't really good for helping patients. So there you go. Thank you.
Thank you. Meredith? Meredith Mann, you'd like to join?
Sorry, guys. I just wanted to say, again, on both the medical and recreational side, I think it's extremely important to have that terpene education, like Jessie Lynn was saying, and educate. And I think it's also equally amongst the responsibility of the dispensaries and people involved. And like Jessie Lynn said, be the leaders and make the change and use the proper language to move this industry forward and make sure Vermont stays on top of that as the educational leaders. So I just wanted to say that was a really great speech Jessie Lynn just gave, and we are all clapping for her here at Magic Man for that one. So thank you.
Thank you. Tito.
Hey everybody! Wow, I wanted to say stuff so bad, but I was actually sitting in a dentist chair for that whole thing. That was awful. Anyway, finally out. So um, you know, I always support everything I'm hearing from Amelia and Fran and Jessie Lynn, and also I really like the idea of no uh, unlimited veg plants. You know what it's all about is when you go to flower your plants. Like right now, you know, I'm getting my 2 flowering plants that I'm gonna flower, and I definitely want to be able to pick from the healthiest of my vegging plants to flower. And if you're also trying to do some breeding and trying to give some really specialized care to one specific person, um, unlimited veg numbers would allow more exploration and just to be able to give better treatment to patients. And next, I also just wanted to talk again about needing clarification that 2 patients living in the same house who are also both caregiving for one other person need to be able to grow the total amount and not be restricted by any household numbers. So in other words, right now, the way it is, it the couple should be able to flower 8 plants with 27 immature plants if they are both patients and both caregivers. So if we could just get clarification with that, that would be excellent. And that's it. Thank you guys as always.
Thanks, Tito. Jessie Lynn?
I want to jump in there and say 1 or 2 things. Thanks, Tito, for bringing that up. In the new legislation that's being drafted, that is looking at increasing caregiver counts so that somebody can caregive for 2 people instead of just 1. It's very exclusive, and it feels almost not right and ethical that it also says in there, so any regular person can caregive for 2 patients. But if you're a patient, you can only caregive for 1. So why can't a patient who is already caregiving for another person then caregive for 2 patients, not just themselves? And actually, James, I heard you in a comment session months ago mention that you would hope somebody that caregives is not able to grow for themselves. So I see that as the same thing. And a great example, I'm a patient. I've been caregiving for another nurse for years and years. It's a nurse who's retired and in cancer remission. Her husband is a very high-ranking military official here in Vermont, so they don't feel comfortable or able to grow on their own. So I've been growing for her and myself. Now my son, who has been offered countless controlled medications, opioids, everything, you name it, and refuses those, now is getting his medical cannabis card. But I'm not able to grow for my son also. My son can't afford the dispensaries, and he knows way better than to go use some illicit market out there and just get any cannabis. So I'm now in the position of deciding, do I stop growing for another nurse because I need to grow for my son? So I feel that written into legislation is extremely biased, is extremely unethical to say anybody can grow, caregive for 2 people, but if you're a patient, you can't caregive for 2 people. So that I just wanted to follow up and express that. What is not in legislation is the fact that we need patients to be able to have more than 1 caregiver. We know in a pandemic that stuff happens. We also know as growers and as people who administer medication or who go purchase and pick up medication to bring to that patient, that 1 person isn't always available. So not allowing multiple caregivers during a pandemic really, and just in general also, really is limiting the support that patient has. That patient needs more than just 1 caregiver. 1 caregiver is not enough. 2 caregivers for pediatrics is not even close to enough. If we break down the hours and you want a caregiver to only work 40 hours a week, which is kind of the, you know, the American way, right? Try to work only 40 hours a week. You need 4.5 caregivers at 40 hours a week to take care of that patient. So we are setting up caregivers to burn out. We are setting up caregivers to not be able to give the support that they should. That is setting up patients to not be able to have the access and support that needs. And we know from the medical standpoint, if you have a caregiver that's burnt out taking care of a patient, that's where we get very concerning issues such as domestic violence and inappropriate support and, you know, things that can be really detrimental. So not only do we need to drastically increase the amount of people a caregiver can support, we need patients to be able to have multiple caregivers. So that's not in legislation. I will continue to push for that, especially at the pediatric level, especially when we look at the baby boomers and the era we're coming into, how many elderly people we have. I have a patient on a regular basis who will say to me, I have no one, Jessie Lynn, and you're hours away from me, and I need a caregiver, and I don't have one person who will do it every day, all the time. And I'm getting to a point where I can't even open my own jar of cannabis, but that's the only thing that helps me. And they have nobody that's with them 24/7. So how is one caregiver going to help one sweet old lady 24/7 attain the medicine she needs that is making her life be livable? Before cannabis, she didn't even want to live. Her life was so miserable. And this is what we are setting people up for. So if you don't have one person in your life that can caregive 24/7 and be your everything and hope that caregiver does not burn out, we are not supporting patients the way patients need to be supported. The last thing I want to mention is, I wanted to mention it before and I forgot. Somehow, you know, what Tito mentions often, and I appreciate that he does, the absolute safest way to use flower is not smoking. It is vaporizing. We are taking that right away from patients. We are taking that educational support away from patients. We are taking probably the absolute best method there is for an acute or, you know, intense situation, from a seizure to sharp shooting chronic pain to a full-on I can't be here right now panic attack. We are taking the safest and best way away from people by keeping that taxation at such a rate that it's absolutely attainable. And I will continue to remind you guys and anybody I talk to, there are medical vaporizers in hospitals in other countries in Europe because they believe in it, because they see it, they know it works. They are in other hospitals as a prescription and part of their therapy, and we are making that unattainable affordably here with the way we are taxing that. So if there's any way we can continue to work on that, I will absolutely do anything we can to support that and see that happen too. So thank you so much, guys, for listening.
Thank you.
Fran is next.
Okay, Jessie Lynn did it again. She covered a lot. I have an Arizer vaporizer that I use on a regular basis, and I find that anyone that cannot smoke, that is the best way for them to ingest cannabis. This is not a little portable that you put in your hand, but it stands on the table, and it's got borosilicate glass and medical grade tubing. So this is something that I think that we need to allow. The other issue that I had actually communicated to the Senate Pro Tem, but I actually forgot to say to you guys, was, yeah, that's not really fair in that bill to have a penalty for a patient to be only able to caregive for one other patient. When you're talking about cost factors, when you're talking about time, just like Jessie Lynn was for growing and the energy that it takes to do this, you're a farmer, you have to be there every day. You're in that room at least 1 hour a day, or those plants may fail. If you take a day off on an outside plant, you may come back and find a mold or a fungus forming that you didn't see was there. So if you have two patients you can work with and you can share expenses in that manner, even if you're not charging for anything, then that becomes much more viable for a better product. And so there you have it. I thank you again.
Thanks, Fran. I think Tito is next.
Yeah, also, having the lower plant numbers for flowering also encourages caregivers to grow the plants bigger, and it's really not how cannabis likes to grow. It definitely does not want to veg for months and months and then finally flower. I feel like ideally, a 30-day veg out is perfect, and so it wouldn't even necessarily increase the canopy size. But it would allow growers to grow plants the way cannabis more likes to grow. And this is indoor I'm talking about. Obviously, outdoor is a whole different story. But indoor plants, they don't want to be vegged out for 3 months or longer and then flowered. And on another note, since we did just touch on vapes, I just want to say what a disappointment it is that the good vapes, these dry flower vapes, like what Fran was just talking about, how they got lumped into the same category as Juuls just kills me. It's just the two products couldn't be more night and day. So I just want to say that. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Tito. Amelia?
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on increasing caregiver ratios and patient ratios, and just once again advocate for some kind of license or license type or a tiered system where we can get people who have cultivation retail licenses able to grow for 5 patients at a time, 12 plants per patient. I think that we have such an untapped resource of growers who are coming into this adult use market who would really, really love to be able to help patients. And I've talked to dozens of them. And I think if we can just build something for them so that they can interact with patients and legally caregive for 5 at a time, because they're already setting up large grows, and this would just be an increase in their plant count. I think that we would solve a lot of the issue of accessibility in regard to cannabis and the inaffordability of the dispensaries. Yeah.
Thanks, Amelia. Jeffrey?
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Excellent. Thanks for your time. Thanks for holding this meeting. James, I recognize I owe you a phone call, so thanks for your patience. I want to offer my support behind the Green Mountain Patients Alliance and their comments on Rule 3. We will be submitting them as a group through the public input portal through the CCB website. So if you have not received them, you'll receive them momentarily. And again, we look forward to this conversation around Rule 3 specifically. As many of you know, for the record, I'm a state registered Vermont Marijuana Registry caregiver, have been since 2005. The program's been around since 2004. I just want to put a bug in your ear. I think I wasn't here for the entire meeting, so apologies if this was already spoken to and addressed. There is a relationship between the adult use marketplace and the medical marketplace. There is, and there will be moving forward. And I ask that you guys stay mindful of this reality. When we look at successful medical programs in other states, they are always decentralized. There are pathways to market, or in this case, pathways to patients. We're hearing basically sentiments of expanding patient and caregiver access to one another. That is in the principle of decentralizing the medical marketplace. I would go further and say, when it comes to the adult use marketplace, the sooner and the greater we provide access to producers, cultivators, product manufacturers on the adult use side, the better, the more successful, the greater affordability, the greater access medicine patients and caregivers will have on the medical side. So there is a strong relationship there. We urge you, and we don't need to hash this out now, but we urge you to keep that in mind as you weigh bringing producers, small producers, to market on the adult use side, the benefits and outcomes it will have for the medical program. So thanks for your time.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Karim?
Yes,
Chief
again, yes, I gotcha. So anyways, this is, I've been a big advocate for a more patient count per medical caregiver. My question and this question is, what in your paradigm, what is a caregiver? Because in real life, a caregiver grows, the cannabis just out of his own resources, just to pretty much give it away at the end. A caregiver makes no money out of having patients. I truly believe that a caregiver should have a higher count of patients. Not only that, not only because they are growing already for a patient, but a lot of the times I see myself having a lot of surplus that end up giving away to friends and family per se. But nonetheless, bringing a higher count will give the caregiver a bit more chance to adequately give away or put its product into the hands of the patients. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. So just a quick recap. Of course, we have about half an hour left in this meeting. This is our public hearing on rules 3 and 4. Rule 3 is really kind of an update to the medical rules. Rule 4 is about enforcement. As soon as, next week, we're going to kind of systematically go through all the public comments we've received, including the ones we received here today, and look to see if we need to amend our rules. And then as soon as we're through that process, we will vote on them as a board, send them over to the Legislative Committee on Administrative Rules, who kind of has the last look at them. So any comments on Rule 3 and 4 are very helpful to us. We've been getting kind of steady comments through, at our meetings, online, written comments, and they've been really helpful to us to help shape those rules. We are in a little bit of a box. We can't go beyond what the statute says. The medical statutes are in Title 18. They moved actually to Title 7. You can see kind of the general parameters that the legislature's laid out for us. And we tried to kind of fill in the specifics with these rules. We know that they're not perfect, but we appreciate all the comments we've been receiving on them. So I think it was Fran first, then Meredith second. So Fran.
Hi, thank you again for taking my comments and for all your work today. I'd like to build on what was being said about caregivers. I definitely lost money helping people, or my own medicine, giving it out to people that needed it more than I did. I mean, a cancer patient, for instance. In Maine, they have a simple license for a caregiver. It's not even a cannabis license, it's just a business license. I know we can't do that right now. I know you're in a box. I'm trying to punch some holes in that box, but the situation is that we do need to expand it so that you can get five patients, just like Maine with a rotating patient. Then you don't have the problem of the caregiver losing a license in 90 days. And it's going to be a much smoother ride for the patients. They won't have to go as far. They can get home delivery from that person, can bring it to them. These things are happening now where people share, where people grow their own home grow and they find somebody that needs it and they share. And there's no reason that these people that have been working so hard for all these years should be left on the sidelines in this. So I'm going to say that I think we really need to push to get that through so that it can be a simple license. I love the idea of, I think Amelia just put it out, let's say a small tier grower was able to take care of 5 patients. that would give me a reason to go through the procedure to get a small tier license, because that was been my goal for many years, to provide low cost cannabis therapy to those in need. So thank you.
Thanks, Fran. Meredith?
Hi, I just wanted to jump in a little bit on this and kind of touch on a little bit of what Jeffrey said about really the connection between the medical program and the rec program. And I know that you're in a box that we're all working on punching holes in, but one thing that I wanted to say is I am really concerned about just general access. I do truly believe that caregiver plant counts need to go up and support everything that everybody has said, but I do also think there should be just a better way for medical patients to have choices and access, and for them not be the ones stuck in the box of the integrated licenses, and be able to have the rights to medical cannabis at every dispensary, in my opinion. And I don't know, I know there's been a little bit of talk about some kind of adjunct license or something to have recreational licenses be able to support medical patients as well. But I just truly am concerned about the access in general for medical patients, even if there was a higher plant count for caregivers. So I just wanted to kind of throw in my support for that. I don't know what'll ever come of it, but I think just there needs to be more access. So that's it. I just wanted to touch on that, and I'm happy to, write a public comment on that as well.
Thanks, Meredith. I think THC Analytics is next.
Yeah, thank you for hearing me out again. I get very exasperated when it comes to the medical patients' rights. One thing that I was talking to somebody else about is that what can you guys come up with the business model medical patients license? And it would just mean that this person has the license to go out and have a business of growing independently for medical patients. You guys already have the infrastructure for it. All you guys have to do is set it into rule. And now these people can not only grow for medical patients, but can actually pull a bit of a profit out of it. Even if this business model is a nonprofit based, it's just enough to be able to pay for the grow, to be able to pay for their time, to be able to make a living out of it while helping the patients themselves. It would be almost like a dedicated nurse that comes and takes care of my grandmother, and she helps her with the medication, and she helps her with their daily routines. It'd almost be about the same business model. That's just my thought on this whole thing. Otherwise, medical patients are relying on people that really either don't make money out of it, or they charge a really crazy amount of money for their services. Thank you.
Thank you. Tito?
This next one was brought up in rules 1 and 2, but really it's a patient issue, and that is, how do I medicate at work in this future tax and regulated marketplace? So I plan on retailing and growing. I feel like there has to be an office carve out, or just some place where I can go medicate as a medical patient in a registered cannabis retail. Thank you.
Yeah. Meredith?
I just wanted to jump in and support that as a medical patient who often finds myself in that situation as well. Of what Tito just said, and having a designated place, I kind of look at it sort of like we've managed to normalize lactation and have a place for women to take care of their babies. So why wouldn't we have a place where people can take care of their medical cannabis needs? So I think that's an amazing idea, and I just wanted to support it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Amelia?
Yeah, I know that these aren't like Q&A sessions, and I understand why, but I just wanted to put in the suggestion that maybe before this whole rulemaking process is finalized, you guys get together and do some kind of public Q&A session. Because it occurs to me that that would probably be really helpful, and it would further along some of the discussion, and some of the repeated points might be things that people just need clarification on. And I know that you guys are really accessible and easy to reach out to, but I think that a public forum like this where people can ask questions as they come to them would be really good.
Yeah, we recognize that. We really do. We do try and do the social equity, economic empowerment, networking events that really are trying to kind of walk through some of the trickier issues about, so far it's been starting a business plan, communicating with municipalities. We're going to do one on banking and insurance. So energy, and environmental efficiency. Vermont is going to join us for one in March. So we're trying to do them in those forums, and of course, we also are just trying to collect questions and post frequent, responses to frequently asked questions. We're also developing guidance for the public to help kind of, in a sort of plain English way, walk people through the application process, and kind of some of our Rule 2 and Rule 4 issues. So we're trying to kind of help on that regard, but recognize that, these are very complex issues. The dual status of cannabis on a state and federal level makes every aspect of this new industry incredibly challenging to navigate. So I hear the concern in the comment. I think Tito, and then Fran.
I just wanted to share my latest experience with getting my my indoor hemp tested at BIA. So we went in there, and they were looking like in a complete panic. They offered me a job because they're so backed up. It took almost 3 weeks to get the test back, and we haven't even started this program yet. I definitely see some problems there.
Yep. Fran?
Hi. Something you said triggered something for me. Yeah, are we doing, and you don't have to answer this, of course, but I'm suggesting that we give some communication to Senator Leahy's office and Senator Sanders' office, and of course, Representative Welch, on passing some of those bills that are in Congress right now, so that you don't have to be as restrictive as you have been. There you go. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Fran. So just a reminder, if you'd like to make a comment, feel free to just kind of raise your virtual hand and we'll call on you. And if you join via the phone and like to make a comment, it's *6 to unmute your phone. And, we'll be here for about 15 more minutes. We have, our regularly scheduled meeting on Tuesday at 11. And then we also just have a public comment, after hours kind of public comment hearing Tuesday evening at 6 o'clock, where kind of all issues are on the table, whatever people want to kind of direct the board about, including, some of the legislation that's being debated or any of our rules or kind of the pre-application process. And then again, next Thursday, from 5 to 7, we have our next networking event. And I'll be walking through kind of the process for pre-application or pre-qualification. And then we're going to turn to banking and insurance issues. Fran?
May I simply suggest that you list the bills and what you think about them? I know about 188 and the others, but perhaps people don't know, and we need to know what you need. That would be it. Thank you.
It's not totally relevant to this conversation today. I know that no one is speaking right now, but really this meeting it has to be dedicated to rules 3 and 4. But I'm happy to kind of discuss those next Thursday potentially, or maybe at our kind of after hours meeting on Tuesday.
Thank you for letting us know.
Mm-hmm. Again, though, Julie made the point the other day that you can kind of just search on the legislature's website for the word cannabis, and any bill that has that anywhere in it will pop up. And so there's a number of bills right now that are moving or kind of have been introduced related to cannabis. Bobby?
Yes, hello. Thank you for fielding my comments and putting this all together in the first place. It's very great of you to be so open to public feedback. I wanted to interject as someone who has never really qualified for the medical system, despite being a chronic pain, I don't know if I'd say patient, sufferer. Anyways, my issue is with the THC caps for solid concentrates and edibles in particular. I understand the medical patients aren't necessarily beholden to the same 50 milligram limit, but I'm at a point where anything less than 100 milligrams, 150 milligrams isn't really going to do much for my chronic pain. As a result, I'm forced to stick with the illicit market, and I don't really see a path forward as a consumer for these type of products to be available to me at this juncture. So I just wanted to raise some concern with that. I also know there is some discussion on enforcement. So I wanted to, again, say that I would hope that these corporate entities that have thus far avoided enforcement issues while they have blatantly flaunted rules such as, having growers who are supposed to be cultivating CBD plants in their fields on their behalf, growing, very high THC cannabis and nothing happening to them, providing patients with moldy edibles. I just really hope that, these issues are actually tackled now that these people are in charge of heralding in the recreational market as well as maintaining the medical. Thank you. I know that was kind of jumbled, but I appreciate the opportunity to speak my mind.
Oh, thank you, Bobby. We have 10 minutes left. This is not your last opportunity to comment on rules 3 and 4. The window is open, the public comment window is open through the end of next week. And we will kind of systematically, I said, go through each kind of unique and distinct comment and, just consider it openly, publicly, and make amendments to our rules as necessary. So, Andy, did you have a comment?
Yes, thank you. First, I just want to say publicly to all the caregivers on this line, you guys are the unsung heroes. I mean, the medical patients are the most important constituent in all of legal cannabis, adult use or medical. So thank you for what you're doing. And we fully agree that you should not be limited to one patient. I think that's really not doing that's doing a tremendous disservice to the medical patients in Vermont. We also agree that medical patients do need more access. So any recommendation is that any benefits that a medical patient has purchasing in a medical dispensary should be able to also get those benefits if they want to purchase in an adult use dispensary. It's more accessible. It will be, given the amount of towns that have opted in. Moreover, because adult use markets are so much larger in mature markets once they become available over the medical markets, it's in the adult use markets that you see a lot of innovation in product. And we want to make sure that the medical patients have access to that also. It also then gives access to the local growers to those patients also. Thank you.
Thank you. Tito.
No, I was just going back to the idea of unlimited vegging plants. I just want to point out that there really is almost no value in a vegging cannabis plant. All of the value is once it's flowered and the buds are created. So maybe that'll help disarm the situation. Thank you.
Fran?
Well, I'll just go beyond what Tito just said. And I remember being in a hearing on the third floor of the State House in Ann Pugh's committee when the then police commissioner stated basically that he had no right to control any plant that didn't have THC. And that veg plants, the discussion at the time was whether someone could sell clones and legally at that moment. And he couldn't say that he could actually take action on that. He dodged the question basically, but because they don't have THC, that might be another issue to help you on that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Kyle, do you have any comments you'd like to make?
I don't think so. Thanks everybody today for their comments on 3 and 4 and thoughts on all the legislative bills that are moving and everything else, related to medical cannabis. Certainly appreciate it.
Julie?
I would echo Kyle's statements, and I appreciate the public engagement. I love that people come and make comments.
Do you have any final comments?
Well, no, I mean, I guess I'll just speak for myself, but I really did have very little knowledge about what, how to cultivate, what this market should really look like. And, it really has been through the public engagement and education that we've come up with kind of a set of rules that I think really do reflect, kind of where the market is, what it should be here in Vermont, and it's not going to deliver everything that we want in year one. I really think that we have to kind of resolve a few issues with the feds and otherwise in our own legislature. But I think it puts us on a path towards getting to a place where we kind of all want to get to. So I really appreciate all the comments that we've received. And all of the kind of thoughtfulness that's gone into your engagement with the board, the public engagement with the board. So Tito, did you want to add anything? I saw you kind of hand pop up and then go back down.
Yeah, I was just laughing to myself because I just remembered that the first thing I woke up to, like right before I woke up this morning in my sleep, I heard your voice saying, okay, you can now raise your virtual hand. It was so clear. It was something else.
It's not a terminology that I've used. I mean, obviously the last year, but it's not something that comes naturally to me. THC analytics.
Just a quick one. It probably has nothing to do with this, but Curaleaf has product that's released in different states and it's the same product. Do you have any food for thought on the made in Vermont, like maple syrup type product stamp? Sorry, that was it.
Thank you. Fran?
Actually, THC Analytics was talking about the Curaleaf product and they just had a recall. And some of that may have gotten to Vermont. So we want to be looking out for that. They had an issue with contamination and I read about it recently. So you might want to look at that.
Thank you, Fran. Nelly, how does our YouTube?
Oh, it didn't work out.
So we'll continue to work on
Yeah.
YouTube live streaming.
It was a bandwidth issue, and I don't know if anyone found it out there in the wild, but I don't think it worked very well. So we're gonna keep trying.
We do record these. Orca Media is on the line. They do post to YouTube. It's just that if we can kind of do it ourselves, it'll just be automatic. So
Thanks for working on that, Nelly.
I try.
Nelly wears many hats here.
So by my clock, we have about a minute left. Just put it out there one last time. If anyone has any comments on rules 3 and 4, please raise your hand virtually and or hit *6 to unmute yourself.
Pumpkins.
I feel like we should do like a New Year's Eve countdown or something like that.
All right. Well, that's the kind of end of the 2-hour window. Thank you again to everyone who joined today, everyone who watches these videos, keeps track of them, anyone who's read our rules, anyone who's kind of taken a moment out of their day to kind of help educate the board and make comments to us. Again, it's been a really thoughtful experience. We're moving into a very, very new phase, very exciting phase of the board's work. You know, the public comment window for 3 and 4s, it will be open for another week, and we'll have kind of, I guess, 3 meetings really next week, 2 official board meetings and 1 networking event. So, you know, all of that information and the links to join are available on our website. So with nothing else, I'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you all, Julie, Kyle. Thank you, Nelly.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.